So today we will present you, as said before, our project funded by CUS, of course, and it's called Cammoning with Children in the Fringes of Cities. The goal of the project is to explore children's perceptions and experiences in the urban commons. To this end, the involved children have analyzed public spaces in their neighborhoods and collectively experiment with ways of opening up those spaces according to their needs and desires. Today I will present, together with Jade, the analysis that we conducted and also the first insights. Jade and I decided to include their contribution in this project on the way art is an expression of natural culture and bottom-up cultural production, and how these perspectives can help to work specifically with this target group towards urban commons. Do you all see the presentation? I think so. The stage we are at is that we almost completed the object analysis of, and we conducted the majority of the field work with the children. We also, in parallel with the work with the 4 groups of children from 4 primary schools in Almere, we also organized brainstorming sessions with CUS members to assess, to discuss the results of the project and the follow-up. And the next phase will be an art exhibition and an art installation in Almere as well. And will be, we will tell also when it will be in the end. Drawing on the theory and practice of urban commons, the focus of this project is twofold. On the one hand, it explores the role of public spaces and art, as I said, in fostering collective visions through exploration into the individual. We use art as a method to form alternate visions in which children can project themselves as unique individuals belonging to a community. On the other hand, it analyzes also children's spatial perceptions alongside their place attachment and sense of community, which are also themes that I am exploring in my own PhD at UVA. Jade?
Building on Donna Haraway's concept of nature culture, we are approaching the commons as a sustainable project to the degree that it recognizes culture as inseparable from nature. Accordingly, we attend to the co-creative capacities of rational and non-rational impulses animated in the natural world and therefore in ourselves. Working in this threshold forms the basis of cultural production, what we are calling the binding agent of the commons. Approach in becoming. As children embody a critical stage of development for building a sense of belonging and agency, we are interested in how children can both co-create a commons and how we as researchers and urban planners are entangled in this process and its possibilities. Nature culture is a term coined by Donna Haraway describing, quote, the synthesis of nature and culture that recognizes their inseparability in ecological relationships that are both biophysically and socially formed, end quote. Nature culture deconstructs the dualism between nature and culture and decenters the human by undoing rationalism, human exceptionalism, and amplifies the kinship between humans, non-humans, rational and non-rational impulses. We are approaching the emotional textures, drawings, and descriptions by the children as a way in to the non-rational impulses.
So our theoretical contribution to the theory and practice of urban commons focuses on children and takes place in the peri-urban. The social-political polarization between core and fringes of cities is a concern of several colleagues of us, yet only few of them looked at the younger population in those contexts. Drawing on the literature on children's spatial perception and experiences, we contextualize those works in the Dutch peri-urban area. For instance, according to our colleague Leah Karsten, we assume that playground aims to compensate for the daily restrictions that children growing in the urban environments encounter. And we explore those type of relationships in the demographic and spatial context of Almere Poort. And we have to say that the population in the Dutch peri-urban and specifically in Almere mainly includes families with children. The municipal plans claim also to pay particular attention to those groups. Although, for instance, we realized that those type of places like green spaces, schools, parks, they often seem to reflect adults' values and space production. Jade?
We found several areas in need of more research concerning the commons. One was limited engagement with children in conceiving of a commons, despite the critical stage in social and psychological development in forming place attachments and a sense of ownership and agency in those spaces. Another area was the role of art making in its capacity as a non-rational agent in urban planning. That is to say, without a rationalized political agenda, but as an agent in its own right. Why is this important? Invoking Donna Haraway's concept of nature culture again, we are interested in the continuum of nature and culture, and therefore seek ways in which an ecological approach to urban planning can be fostered. In the natural world, both rational and non-rational influences co-create the human, non-human community. Therefore, sustainable commons should also incorporate this ecology of influences into its fabric. Art making is exceptionally geared to give expression to non-rationalism and generate insights and meaning making for the individuals as for the collective. At the outset, we expected novel contributions from the children as we perceived them as less influenced politically and socially than older constituents. However, the object analysis led us to investigate the social and psychological influence on children to synthesize with the society and move away from non-rationality as a result of our current linear scientific rational bias. In this regard, more empirical inquiries into the views and perceptions of children are in order, as the adult perspectives, teachers, parents, and researchers usually dominate the new field of educational and pedagogical commons. We evolved our methods as a result and are working within a threefold assemblage for the remainder of this project and in the model of the second upcoming project. And here we are showing the threefold model for the practice/analysis, as this is also a co-creative process, which we will break down stage by stage in the following section. We begin with the object analysis, which enables us to access the non-rational and rational elements before folding them into conceptual frames. And next, we reflexively engage with the objects interactionally, which becomes then a mode of artistic research serving to alter the existing frame for urban planners and researchers, and back again to an analysis of those objects as co-creative to urban planning. Based on our ongoing work in this project, we are suggesting that the preceding model transforms and amplifies what is possible in the entanglement of the arts and public space, and that this lays a groundwork for sustainable urban commons because it is a conscious reverberation of nature culture and the rational, non-rational impulses that are always already active within natural evolution, or put another way, the force of nature in becoming.
So I hope now that the child that was in our group will be happy to see this video. So in this project, we used the ethnographic methods, mainly walk-along discussions and art lessons. The walk-along discussions helped the involved children to explore their neighborhoods from different perspectives, to open up also to our project and to us. They particularly appreciate the exploration of the green places, And during the walk, we also stopped in 3 areas to first study the maps of their neighborhoods with an approach based on the mental maps of Kevin Lynch, and then discuss their knowledge and experiences in their neighborhoods. In the end, they seem to start developing new meanings and perceptions of the space around them and also on the construction of the city. We also realized that because we had 2 groups, one between 8 and 10 years old and one between 11 and 12, 13 years old, we also realized that the younger group seems more satisfied about the playground and the public spaces, while the older group started expressing the need for different types of spaces of encounter. They manifest also the importance of green spaces and their critique towards the dense urban development. It is also interesting to notice how their focus is around the spaces close to their schools and their homes, where they are more free to experience the space with their peers. After the walk along discussion, we had a series of 3 art lessons per group in these 4 groups, and we explored methods to develop collective visions of urban spaces where children can project themselves as individuals, but also as a part of a larger community. The art lessons, on the one hand, play an important role in our study of children's perceptions, while on the other, children, through those lessons, start to develop a clearer spatial image. That is also the basis to enhance a sense of emotional security and belonging to their neighborhoods. Through the study of their drawings, it emerged their need for diversified spaces of encounter and uses of the existing public spaces. Their ideas were stimulating for us to understand their perception and thus to explore how, in the next phases, we could unpack the commodification of a selected space by them. Some key emotional concepts emerge, such as emotional safety in relation with the satisfaction also of their needs and expectations into the public spaces. Just to say that those videos are a rough compilation of our material, just to give you an idea, and in the end, the filmmaker will realize final products for both the community, professionals, and researchers. So the ideas behind this project started while I was conducting my fieldwork during my PhD. As I realized that children are an important target group in the community in Almere, and according to local professionals, also they were struggling to find their spatial dimension. In my PhD, I study how space and participatory practices can help develop a sense of community. With this study on urban commons that we are presenting, we focus on the concept of place attachment, looking at this specific target group. We argue that the methods we use in this project can help us to analyze place attachment of children, and this knowledge contributes to explore the role of public spaces and art in developing collective visions. Hence, building on their place attachment and sense of belonging, we aim to gain knowledge on the operationalization of the concept of commons. Studies of people perceptual processes have been of great interest in the planning disciplines. And we believe that exploring children's perspectives can contribute those studies. As children's perception and experience of the environment is different comparing to adults. According to Lynch, for instance, the environmental image in general, which is accepted as the generalized picture of the exterior physical world, is a key element for individuals. Children, on the other hand, creatively appropriate information from the adult's world to produce their own unique perception and experience of places. They have a unique way of experiencing their social spatial environment, and knowing how they perceive the city can help to address urban policies. Drawing on the statement that people's spatial behavior depends partially on the environmental image they have, childhood places and emotional attachment to the environment shape a person's identity and image of the world. Jade?
So as already mentioned, we are currently analyzing the videos, drawings, and questionnaires of the children with an object analysis approach. The method chosen for analyzing the children's artworks was an object analysis in the mode of the Amsterdam School for Cultural Analysis, ASCA. In contrast to approaching the objects through a predetermined discursive lens, for example, discourse analysis, structuralism, or critical race theory, this analytic approach strives to take the object on its own terms before folding it into the conceptual lenses that the objects invoke. While the analyst is not considered neutral in this method, as analysts, we commit to the practice of encountering the object as it appears to us at face value. The method itself is situated within colonial and feminist interventions in that it interrupts linear knowledge making and instead takes seriously non-rational and effectual expressions in the object as agents co-creative to a social ecological system, as well as as a co-creative force between the analyst and the object that is mutually transformative. This is what feminist science studies scholar Karen Barad refers to as intra-action. Our object analysis showed that children reproduced already existing spaces of encounters. For example, swimming pools, skate parks, and playgrounds, natural landscapes such as beaches and flowers, and typical building spaces like shopping centers. However, they also expressed boredom repeatedly, even when these spaces were available. Other expressions included excitement about change, and yet again, the societal frameworks they were synthesizing to in this age range had them largely recreating what was already present, rather than employing creative and non-rational, that is to say, unreasoned ideas, novelty as it expresses itself spontaneously in natural evolution. This resulted in a tension that folded back on us as researchers and our place in establishing the framework that they were synthesizing to. The center picture, the animated building and shared faces in them, is an outlier. However, we are amplifying these outliers in our model, specifically in the mode of artistic research, and thinking them together with the more abundant rational urban planning perspectives by the children. In the first picture, we see a combination of word and image. We see the rationalization process as at work here, as well as non-rationality making its presence through marbles, a dome of marbles almost as large as Europa Plan, while the third picture is more indicative of the rational approach that the children expressed to planning. As mentioned, we decided to incorporate the outliers with the rational majority as co-creative to what urban planning can be. This means in developing an artistic research project, as well as creating the framework for our ongoing project.
Yeah, so this picture that we are showing here are kind of our favorite images and drawings, but we have a lot of drawings from them, and we were very enthusiastic to analyze them and study them. And I think we are completing the analysis of the drawings, and we are halfway on the analysis of the videos. And And we're going to start the analysis also of the models of what they would like to realize in Almere Poort. And in the next phases, we are going to have a temporary art installation in a street, Europalan, that they selected as a street that it's important for them, but on the other hand, it's missing something. And so we are going to explore together with them how we can unpack a bit these public spaces through a small and temporary piece of art. And in the next phases, we were thinking about the 1st and the 2nd of December, but we would like also to hear from you if it's a good date to have the final art exhibition for both researchers, professionals from the gemeente or local institutions, and also for the community. And there we will show the final movies, the models, and the pictures from the project itself. The follow-up project is a project with youth. So as we were very happy to work with children, and we also realized that young people and especially adolescents between 12 and 17, 18 years old have indeed no apparent right to modify their public space and find also their own spatial dimension, while children might have some playground. They struggle in those type of neighborhood to find their own dimension. So we thought that it would be an interesting starting point for a new project in the Amsterdam metropolitan region, New York City also, where Jade is now, and Johannesburg. And yeah, here we were started thinking on some questions that we would like to start discussing with you, but of course, I guess you have a lot of other questions as well. So we were thinking that we would like to unpack how to operationalize the results of this project, and how also to structure a commoning of the research, which can connect artists, community, and researchers. We are concluding, I think, perfectly on time. We mentioned some key references, yeah, please feel free to start the discussion. Jade, do you want to conclude with something as well?
I think your conclusion was perfect. We look forward to hearing your questions and feedback.
I stopped sharing so that I can see all the people in. Hi, Maria. I see you jumped in.
Hello. Yeah, I actually was able to follow most of it. So thank you so much for a hugely interesting project, and a project that is at the heart of the CUS agenda. And we're very happy you could offer this talk. I'm sure there are many questions and comments. I have some, but maybe open the floor to people if they want to jump in. And you did say what you would like to hear in terms of suggestions, but also you're open to questions, right? Or general comments. So,
yeah, sure.
Yeah. Maybe I can start to just give people time to collect their thoughts. Yeah, thank you. It's a fascinating project. Yeah, I've done work with Kevin Lich's methodologies in the past, and I always find it amazing how fresh it can be at any given moment, and how much you get out of it. So I have two questions. The one is, did you find any methodological challenges in trying to you know, get the children to did you have any difficulties with how children understood the different components of Kevin Lynch? So did you have to explain it to them so that they're on the same page? Did you have to, how did that work? And the other one is more conceptual, but I can wait for that for later.
Okay, shall I just answer or are we taking a, okay.
Maybe answer, yeah.
Well, I can start, but of course, Jade, we can answer together. So if I understand correctly the question, I think one main interesting reflection is between the different ages. So while the group between 8 and 10 years old, they were a bit struggling to, we had to help them more to understand where they were and how to read the map. And of course, also in that group itself, there were differences. So there were people that were more like inclined to understand quickly. And there were actually, that was an interesting thing that they were helping each other. So I don't know if in the video it was captured sometime, but some children was like explaining to the other how we were going to do it.
My question was really, because part of the method is about how people interpret these different categories. And I wonder to what extent, some reflection from your part as to the fact that you actually had to explain or create a common understanding, that affects the method, not necessarily in bad ways, but I wonder whether you have reflected on what that does to the method itself and therefore to your results.
Well, I think me and Jade reflect on this a lot, on our role on our role there as a researcher ourselves, and well, also we conducted the part of it. An art teacher did the lessons, did the work as well. So she explained less than what we did, for instance. So we could also kind of compare the different
So you had a control group.
Kind of.
All right. Yeah, that's nice. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it happened because of COVID as well, but it was an interesting way to reflect on the differences, and on of course there were also different groups. Like for instance, the art teacher had a group with a lot of family problems and personal behavior. So it was also more difficult for her to gain the trust of the group. But the positive thing is that because of the work, I think the work helped a lot to gain the trust, to find themselves in a different environment than the school, because I think it's also an important aspect that the project was with school. So in an environment that it's already set, it's already there was the teacher there with us, and that also influenced the way they were behaving, because the teacher was calling them back if they were behaving differently, while I was trying to let them more free.
It's very challenging environment. Yes. So I'll look forward to reading when you start, publishing or analyzing further the data. Maybe you could give us an update on this and more.
And we will have also a final, I think, presentation and discussion together.
That would be great. Yeah.
The 1st or 2nd of December, something like that.
Very interesting. Thank you so much. Yeah. So I'll open the floor to more questions and comments.
Okay, I'm Riddhi Sethi. I'm from New Delhi, and in my PhD work, I involved children's voices, and I asked them what do they like in the daycare and what they don't like. So I used drawings with them. So it was an amazing moment when I learned so many aspects of the answers of the daycare which we never thought. So I wanted to know what was your aha moment what did you learn something about the environment that you thought that so it's so new that a child is thinking about it and we as adults never thought about it.
I think Jade has something to say to this. Would you like to answer, or you are muted, though?
Yes, but if you wouldn't mind just repeating the question, because I'm not sure I understood it exactly.
When when you have used this technique with children, you've used art and walk and talk and the maps around it. So there's a list of expected responses, but children have a way of giving us surprises by, oh my God, I never thought like that. So what was that your one moment, what a child shared with you, which you had never thought about the environment? Any one thought that they shared that was only coming from them and has not come from an adult so far?
Yeah, that's a really nice question. I think, a few things that became central to the research as we were analyzing what took place was that, the younger group was extremely aware of what was happening, whereas they might not have had such a developed spatial formulation for their surroundings. They did know if flowers were removed. They knew what was happening around them. They were so keen as to what was going on. That was definitely a surprise, because as Francesca was mentioning in response to the last question, there was also a commenting aspect in terms of the methodological approach, because I was invited as a visiting artist. And so I was really an outsider. I was not a teacher, and I was very loose in my walk along discussion. And so they were just very free and they expressed themselves so openly. So there's so much affectual dimension to their surroundings and awareness. So that was a really exciting aspect. But then on the other side, which was a sort of equally surprising and fascinating, was that they were moving into a mode of, when tasked with, okay, how would you design this urban space? They were moving into a space of, how would adults do it? They were synthesizing to what the norm was, what the standard was. So you had these two sort of impulses, which is what I was talking about in terms of rational and non-rational. And you could really see the presence of both of them, which was, how our methodology sort of evolved as a result as well, to accommodate them, to bring them together. So.
And I think a key word that Jade made me notice in their in the videos or in the questionnaires is boring. And often when they were describing some spaces, this was the main word that we were trying to unpack and trying to understand why is that. And maybe it's a funny note. So I see Lisa raised the hand, but we have also a question in the chat.
Hi, so I have a very short question. How did you decide on the age of the participants? Because I can imagine maybe if they were younger, that they would take less an adult perspective into their design. So I wonder about your thoughts about that.
Well, so the initial idea came while talking with the municipality of Almere, because there was some concern about specific age groups. So then we became curious to know them, to know which were those children. And then we discussed it with the directors of the 4 schools, and we asked them to have a diversified group as well, and all children living in the neighborhood as well. And that were the groups that we ended up working with. I don't know if Jade has a more clear answer about that.
I would only add that we had the initial, we had the same initial conception, which was that working with a younger group would prove to that would produce more novel sort of contributions to what a commons could be, what the urban landscape could look like. And so that was one of the main surprises, really, was that that is an age range where they're seeking to synthesize and they're in a psychological developmental phase. And this is not true of every society. So there's a social aspect that's really important here. But we tend to be leaning in a rational bias in our Western society, like this sort of rational planning. And so that's where they were moving when they were tasked with, how do you see the urban? So we did not see a lot of novel contributions, which is why we were trying to amplify and also shift the model for our upcoming project to really encourage them to bring those 2 points together and not lose these more creative or novel or non-rational aspects. That makes sense, if that's clear.
And
so there's a question in the chat as well. It is, why did you choose to cooperate with a specific school, and how may it have influenced your data collection?
I think to the first part of the question we answered already. And how can it influence your data collection? That's a very interesting question. I need to reflect on that. Can we take also Inso while we are thinking about that?
Of course.
I actually want to reflect on the point of that question, how does choosing school can influence the data collection. I think if you look from the perspective of commons, school is attached to the neighborhood, so kids go to the school, they live in the neighborhood, so it's actually a very good node that collecting collecting local participants and their parents. So obviously, to adapt to Lynch's this language socially, school is actually a very important urban node in the community fabric. So I think that completely makes sense. My question is rather so do I understand right, these children you work with, they're sort of pre-youth, so they're not exactly teenager, they're just getting age, they're pre-youth. So I think that's a very interesting age that they start the sense making, but immediately when they get into the teenager process, they immediately need more. So it's if I looking at my research or some of my participations, would see if you see teenager kids are they're the NIMBY of everyone. And I think the interesting point that you do this action research, but it's also that you pave them, you pre-pave them to their community. So I guess would it be interesting for you to follow up?
Yeah.
How do they, because now there are quite some research on kids, but on teens, there's still a lack of pictures, some reflections.
And indeed, I think that those reflections brought us to the follow-up project to think about involving them. One, because first, because with the next group, we will not be involving the schools, but we will start from. We were thinking to have actually a combination of local schools, but also young people that hang out around the social, the Buurt Centrum, so the social workers in the neighborhoods. So try to have a bit more and a different type of environment, a different type of safe space. So try to build a different space and rent a new space that is not the neighborhood center, and is not the school, it's in their neighborhoods, but it's something like that they can try to build kind of from scratch, so that they can build up indeed. And I think this came out from those reflections. And And of course, while we were watching back the videos, because I think the videos was an interesting part, because so also the comparison from when me and Jade, we were there, when the art teacher was there, when there was the person from the professional from the municipality there. So, watching on how a different type of interaction between the researchers or the professionals and the children were working, and watch them back in the video, that was an interesting experience for us as well, because we were trying to look at the video and we looked at it so many times to check different points of view and perspective, that I think that kind of helped us also to collect the data in different ways. And of course, me and Jade had a different way of looking at it as well, of course, different methods, different approach. And also, I think while we were discussing, that was the more interesting way that we were analyzing it as well. And we were learning also from that.
Thank you very much, Francesca. And I think there is Rianne, I think, has a question. She has her hand risen there.
Yes.
Yeah, and then Jules, you have a question as well. So let's take both questions and then you can synthesize an answer. Rianne, please.
Okay, thank you for your presentation. I'm talking from a child expert's view. I'm not into architecture or planning or whatever. And what I would like to ask, you take quite an approach, a perspective on children from a children's developmental perspective. And this is also in the discussion, like children from this age, they can make sense out of this. I would like to ask where these ideas come from, because we also know from literature that children can make sense of their environment from a younger age, depending very much on how you facilitate this process in elicit their opinions, their sense-making thoughts and feelings about it. So that's my first point. And the second point I ask about is data collection and the influence when you go via schools. Because what I like so much about your project is that you go for the common spaces in the community, which is a very interesting take on it, but you exclude by going via schools some children in special education, for example, also, and the influence of the educational system is often very present. So, and I don't know how much this has influenced your data collection or what. I have no idea. I'm too little into your work to understand this. But I would really, I would like to understand a bit more the perspective you took on your participants, on how you view them, on how you see them as participants in your research process and as, data collection informing persons.
I think it's very useful questions as well.
Yeah, very important. So shall we take Jules as well? And then Jules, please.
I have two short questions. The first is in your results, or at least impressions, did you see anything of gendered perceptions? I was thinking, hearing about your research immediately about the gendered playground, for example. So I can imagine that girls and boys experience the public space differently, and that maybe girls or boys have more to do in public space, for example. Did you get that impression already or not? And the second is, I think this came up earlier as well, this question in another session. If you have any idea what kind of art installation it's going to be.
Ah, yes.
Can I just, there is because we are like we have like 12, 13 minutes. Maybe Yinsu, you have a question, another comment or question to add, or is your hand raised from previously?
No, wait, okay, I'm not muted. No, I just want to respond to Rihanna, like about these age groups, because I also works with children. So I think like there's a, it's like, let's say roughly like under 7, kids are more creative, or they attach the physical space more with their own imagination. So if you work with them, especially for design and planning profession, it needs to take a bit more efforts to translate their interpretation of space, or like what do you want, what do you need, to actual space. So a very simple example is like, oh, I want a castle. Do you mean that he or she, they really want a castle? Like very often, if you look at it means some other things. It probably means intimacy spaces, social spaces. That's one perspective. So from 7 to 12, I think like children's development stage, they start to be more in line with actual observation and actual more close to reality. So I think that that's another stage that like professionals to like we can mobilize other skill sets to work with them. And then to the teen, like different needs and different socializing needs. So you also observe, like, you know, like to a certain age, that boys and girls, they stop playing together, but there are other things are going on. So I think it's very interesting to see like how we should observe that and like decode the language and facilitate, like, you know, what is going on, what should we respond to, the sense of belonging in different stages of kids. That's actually very interesting. Yeah.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Well, we had a lot of discussions with you as well about this project and sharing experiences. So I think that's why you also know a lot of what we are doing and what are also our questions, because sometimes we have a lot of questions that we also don't know how to answer, but I will try to be very quick because we are running out of time, I think. Jade, please jump in. So regarding the gender, yes, indeed, we noticed that there was a difference in the type of places that they prefer. And also, of course, in the interaction with us, because we are the majority of the person working with them, we were female as well. So there was also a different, I think, interaction with us, and a different way they would open up with us as well. And the art installation, yes, we know what's gonna be. We are going to have like a small model of what can be a permanent installation, and it would be like a boat with some flags that represent children, every child perspective. Very in brief, but I think regarding the concept behind this installation, Jade knows well how to explain it. I can just describe it. And regarding, what both Insu and Rianne were saying about this age, that indeed is a kind of, it's in the developing, so it's a kind of changing moment between a more how do you say, not spontaneous, but kind of innocent way of looking at space, and a moment in which it is indeed influenced by adults. And of course, we chose to work with the schools, and this influenced the way we collect the data, because they had specific tasks also when they were drawing. The teacher, the art teacher that was part of our project, was explaining what they were drawing, but also she was trying to ask them first. So she was trying to have a more like a discussion. What do you think about the space first? Explore the space through the walk, and then start the drawing. And I think like what we noticed from the video, I don't know if I think it's interesting to answer a bit to all of your questions. Is that in the walk there was a different behavior from them than when they were in the classroom, and that I think it's an interesting point that maybe Jade and I should focus a bit more and look back at the videos with attention on these questions as well. I hope I quickly answered.
Thank you, Francesca and Jade. Yeah.
Just a little something to both questions. So Rihanna, yeah, it's a really important question and point, and we are interested in developing more that threshold between the developmental stage and the influence of society. So the fact that the children were, it seemed to be moving into, there was a definite awareness. You know, Dutch society is very proactive in how they handle, I know, children and the exposure, and you know, what are your thoughts, what are your feelings about the city? This is something that's very distinctive, I think, about Dutch culture. But what we saw was that their developmental stage was synthesizing to what is already planned. So this was a really interesting moment, I think, that we can make an intervention in, because what is the groundwork that we are giving to these children to integrate with? And I think taking responsibility for that is a really important part of these developmental stages, which are not fixed in the sense, I think, that is often taken for granted. But this is obviously just a starting point, and we plan on doing a lot more research, but I think that this threshold is a really a powerful one, and where we can come together. As Francesca was mentioning earlier, there's like two scales going on in this project of Cammoning. One is amongst the children, or the target group that we're working with in the next project, slightly older. But then there's another one, which is the researchers, the artists, the teachers, different people coming in, from bringing in different perspectives, bringing in different energy, and really altering the landscape to which the children or young people are integrating. So yeah, and then the gender question, also interesting in terms of artistic research and the art that's coming out of, like, in this interactional sort of relationship with the productions of the children in the videos, for instance, as an outlier, again, not as a rational response to the task of how are you reimagining the urban. But what we saw was some of the girls were, when they were by themselves, is captured on video, they were taking selfies and pictures of each other in the flowers. And this is very provocative, I think, in terms of, again, this threshold between nature and culture, how people are, and how these young people are experiencing the natural world, and how this reflects back on themselves. So this is in our project that, you know, I'm starting to develop in relation to this still of the girls and the flowers. So, you know, there are definitely some really interesting, I think, gender points to explore here. I think we're out of time, but yeah, great
definitely question. Yes, lots more to come out of this work, and we all look forward to the continuation. Hopefully we'll host you again here. Thank you very much, Francesca and Jade, for this wonderful presentation, wonderful work.
Thank you all for the questions and for the participation.